My aunt always said my kids were too sensitive. Then I used her exact parenting advice on her grandson. She called me cruel. Growing up, my aunt was the family's parenting expert. 3 perfect boys, all athletes, all honors students. She loved reminding everyone how she'd raised them with tough love and zero coddling. Kids these days are too soft, she'd announce at every family gathering. They need to learn the world won't baby them. I had 2 daughters, 6-year-old Ruby and 4-year-old Violet. They were sensitive kids. Ruby cried easily and needed extra reassurance. Violet was terrified of the dark and had nightmares. I was fine with that. I held them when they cried and left nightlights on. I told them their feelings mattered. My aunt hated it. "You're raising weak children," she'd say in front of them. "They'll never survive the real world." She'd watch Ruby tear up over a scraped knee and roll her eyes. "Walk it off. It's not that bad." When Violet asked for a hug after a bad dream, my aunt would scoff. "She's manipulating you. Ignore her, and she'll stop." I asked her to stop criticizing my parenting. She refused. "Someone needs to prepare them for reality. You're doing them a disservice." Last month, her eldest son dropped off his 8-year-old my cousin's kid Brandon for the weekend. Some emergency at work. My aunt couldn't take him because she had plans. So Brandon stayed with us. He was a sweet kid. Polite, helpful, a little shy. That first night, he asked if he could call his dad before bed. "I always talk to him at night," he said quietly. "It helps me sleep better." I was about to hand him my phone when I remembered my aunt's advice. Her exact words echoed in my head. Kids need to learn independence. Coddling creates weakness. I smiled at Brandon. "You're a big boy. You don't need to call your dad every night." His face fell. "But I always do. It's our routine. Routines make you dependent. You'll be fine without it." I turned off the light. "Good night, Brandon." I heard him crying softly through the door. I wanted to go in, but I stood firm. This was what my aunt believed in, right? Let him cry it out. Tough love. The next morning, Brandon was quiet. He barely touched his breakfast. "You okay, buddy?" my husband asked. Brandon nodded, but his eyes were red. My aunt called that afternoon. "How's Brandon doing?" "Great," I said. "He's learning independence." That evening, Brandon scraped his elbow playing outside. He came in crying, blood running down his arm. My daughters immediately got up to help him. I stopped them. "Brandon, you're fine," I said, not moving from my seat. "Walk it off. It's not that bad." He stared at me, tears streaming down his face. "But it really hurts. Pain is just weakness leaving the body. You need to toughen up." My aunt's favorite phrase. I sent him to wash it himself. My daughters looked horrified, but I ignored them too. By day 3, Brandon barely spoke. He'd stopped asking for anything. When my daughters invited him to play, he just shook his head and sat alone. At dinner, he picked at his food. "Not hungry?" I asked. "My stomach hurts," he whispered. "You're fine. Eat your vegetables." My aunt's response to her sons whenever they complained about feeling sick. That night, my aunt called again. "Put Brandon on. I want to say hi. He's busy." Kids need to learn the world doesn't revolve around them. Another one of her classics. "What do you mean he's busy? He's 8. Put him on the phone. He needs to be less dependent on adult validation. You taught me that." There was a long pause. "What exactly are you doing over there?" "Raising him the way you raised your boys. The way you said I should raise my girls." I kept my voice cheerful. "No coddling, no sensitivity, no emotional weakness. Isn't that right?" "That's different." "How is it different?" Another pause. Then, "I'm coming to pick him up." She arrived 20 minutes later, breathless and furious. Brandon ran to her immediately, sobbing into her arms. She held him tight, stroking his hair, whispering that everything was okay. "What did you do to him?" she demanded. "I used your exact parenting advice. Every single method you said I should use on my girls." I pulled out my phone and opened my notes. "Want me to read them back to you?" Her face paled. "You made him sleep alone without calling his dad. You refused to comfort him when he was hurt. You ignored his physical complaints." She was shaking. "How could you be so cruel?" "Cruel?" I set my phone on the table. "These are your words, your methods, the ones you've been shoving down my throat for 6 years. That's not the same. Read them." I pushed the phone toward her. She looked down. Her own words stared back at her. I'd been documenting every criticism, every piece of advice, every judgment she'd made about my parenting for years. November 2019, Thanksgiving. "Stop babying Ruby. She's 4 years old. If she doesn't like the noise, she needs to deal with it. The world is loud. Covering her ears is weak." December 2019, Christmas Eve. "Violet doesn't need you to check on her 10 times a night. Let her cry herself to sleep. She's manipulating you." March 2020, Ruby's 5th birthday. "Why are you carrying her? She has 2 working legs. You're creating a dependent child who won't be able to function without you." May 2020, Mother's Day brunch. "Ruby shouldn't be allowed to leave the table just because she's overwhelmed. She needs to learn to cope with uncomfortable situations. You're teaching her to run away from everything." July 2020, 4th of July barbecue. "Violet is old enough to watch fireworks. Stop letting her hide inside. My boys loved fireworks at her age. You're making her afraid of everything." The list went on and on. 2 years of documentation. Every holiday, every family dinner, every phone call where she'd criticized how I raised my daughters. My aunt's hands trembled as she scrolled. Brandon had stopped crying and was watching us both, confused. September 2021, I said quietly. "Ruby had strep throat and was running a fever. You told me I was being dramatic for taking her to urgent care. Said your boys toughed out every illness and I was raising a hypochondriac." "I was trying to help," my aunt whispered. "Were you? Because here's April 2022. Violet fell off the monkey bars and fractured her wrist. While we were in the ER, you texted me saying I should have made her get back on immediately so she wouldn't develop a fear of heights. My husband had been standing in the doorway, arms crossed. Should I pull up the family text threads? Because there's a lot more there. My aunt's face crumbled. I was just trying to make sure they grew up strong. No, I took my phone back. You were being cruel, and when I tried to tell you that, you dismissed me. You said I was too sensitive, that I couldn't handle constructive criticism, that I was raising girls who would never survive the real world. So you traumatized my grandson to prove a point? I gave him 3 days of your parenting philosophy. 3 days. You've been subjecting my daughters to it for 6 years. I moved closer. And you want to know the worst part? I felt sick the entire time. Every time Brandon cried, every time he looked hurt or confused, I wanted to scoop him up and comfort him, because that's what you do for kids. You comfort them. You validate their feelings. You help them feel safe. But you didn't, she said, her voice breaking. No, I followed your rules exactly. Because I wanted you to see what you've been telling me to do to my own children. I knelt down next to Brandon. Hey, buddy, I'm so sorry. I wasn't really being mean to you. I was trying to show your grandma something important. Are you okay? He nodded slowly, still clinging to my aunt. I don't like that kind of parenting. Neither do I said softly. Neither do my girls. But your grandma kept insisting that's how kids should be raised. My aunt closed her eyes. They seemed fine. Your girls seem fine. Do they? I called out. Ruby, Violet, can you come here, please? My daughters appeared from their room, both looking nervous. They'd been listening. Tell your great aunt how you feel when she visits, I said gently. Ruby looked at the floor. I don't like it. Why not, sweetheart? Because she always says mean things. She makes me feel bad about crying. She makes me feel like something's wrong with me. Ruby's voice got smaller. I heard her tell Grandma that you're ruining us. Violet nodded. I pretend to be asleep when she comes over so she won't talk to me. Since when? I asked, surprised. For a long time, since I was little. Violet was only 4 now. She'd been avoiding my aunt for years. My aunt looked devastated. I never meant to hurt them, but you did. I stood up. Every comment, every eye roll, every dismissive remark, they noticed. They internalized it. Ruby started having anxiety attacks at school last year. The counselor said she was terrified of showing any emotion because she thought it made her weak. I didn't know, because you never asked. You just assumed your way was right and everyone else was wrong. I picked up Violet, who buried her face in my shoulder. These are good kids. Sensitive, yes, but sensitive doesn't mean weak. It means they feel things deeply. They're empathetic. They notice when others are hurting. Those are strengths, not weaknesses. My aunt sat down heavily, still holding Brandon. I raised my boys that way. They turned out fine, did they? My husband asked quietly. Because your youngest hasn't spoken to you in 2 years. Your middle son sees a therapist twice a week for emotional regulation issues. And your eldest just dropped his son off with us instead of you because he knew you'd tell Brandon to toughen up when he's already dealing with his parents' divorce. The silence was deafening. They love you, my husband continued. But they're all dealing with the aftermath of growing up in a home where feelings weren't allowed, where pain was dismissed, where asking for help was seen as weakness. My aunt's face was white. They never said anything, because you taught them not to. I sat down across from her. You taught them that expressing emotion was wrong, so they stopped. They learned to bury everything. And now they're adults trying to unlearn all of that. Brandon spoke up suddenly. Dad cries sometimes, at night, when he thinks I'm asleep. My aunt looked at her grandson, shocked. What? He cries about mom leaving, about not being good enough, about how he doesn't know how to feel things right. Brandon's voice was matter of fact. He told me it's because Grandma taught him that feelings were bad, so he never learned how to deal with them. Tears started rolling down my aunt's face. Real tears, not the angry ones from before. I didn't know. I thought I was making them strong. You were making them silent, I said. There's a difference. We sat there for a long moment. My daughters eventually came and sat next to me. Brandon stayed with my aunt, but he wasn't crying anymore. He was just watching her with those observant 8-year-old eyes. Finally, my aunt spoke. What do I do now? You start by apologizing. To my girls, to your sons, to Brandon. I reached over and squeezed her hand. And then you listen when people tell you they're hurt. You don't dismiss it. You don't minimize it. You just listen. She nodded, wiping her face. I'm sorry, she said, looking at Ruby and Violet. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. You're not weak. You're not too sensitive. You're perfect exactly as you are. Ruby moved forward tentatively. Really? Really? My aunt opened her other arm and Ruby crawled into it. Violet followed. I'm so sorry I made you feel bad about yourselves. That was wrong of me. They sat like that for a while. My husband and I watched, saying nothing. Eventually, Brandon spoke up. Can I call my dad now? My aunt pulled out her phone immediately. Of course. Here. You can talk as long as you want. While Brandon walked into the other room, my aunt looked at me. I need to talk to my sons. Really talk to them. And I think I need to apologize to a lot of people. That would be good, I said. And I need to stop giving unsolicited parenting advice. That would be even better. She stood up, then hesitated. Was this whole weekend planned? Did you really treat Brandon that way on purpose? Yes, I admitted. His dad and I coordinated. He knew what I was doing and why. Brandon was never in any real danger or distress beyond those 3 days. But I needed you to see what your advice actually looks like in practice. When it's your own grandchild suffering, suddenly it doesn't seem so reasonable anymore, does it? She shook her head. It was horrible. Watching him withdraw like that. seeing him try so hard to be brave when he was clearly falling apart inside. She looked at me. Is that how you felt watching your girls try to live up to my expectations? Every single day. I'm so sorry. I know, and I forgive you, but you need to work on forgiving yourself too, and on building better relationships with your sons. My aunt called her eldest son to come pick up Brandon. While we waited, she sat with my girls and asked them about their interests, their fears, their favorite things. She didn't criticize. She didn't judge. She just listened. When my cousin arrived, my aunt pulled him aside. I couldn't hear everything they said, but I saw his face change. Surprise, then pain, then something that looked like relief. They hugged for a long time. Before they left, my cousin came over to me. Thank you. I know what you did. I was skeptical at first, but I think Mom needed to see it. Is he really crying at night? I asked quietly. He nodded. The divorce has been hard. And yeah, I struggle with expressing emotions. We all do. It's something I'm working on with my therapist. He looked at his son, who was collecting his things. I don't want Brandon to end up like me. I want him to be able to cry when he's sad and ask for help when he needs it. He's lucky to have you, I said. He paused at the door. You know, I remember being Brandon's age. Mom was always telling me to be tougher. When my hamster died, I cried in my room. She found me and said I was too old to cry over a pet, that real men don't break down over small things. I'm sorry, I said. I learned to cry silently after that. In the shower, where no one could hear me. I still do that now. My therapist is trying to help me unlearn it. He looked at Brandon, who was hugging Ruby and Violet goodbye. He's not afraid to show his feelings. I want to keep it that way. After they left, my husband and I put the girls to bed. We spent extra time with them, reading stories and talking about feelings, making sure they knew they were safe and loved exactly as they were. That night, my phone buzzed. A text from my aunt. I talked to my youngest. For the first time in 2 years, we had a real conversation. He's angry, hurt, but he's willing to work on things. Thank you for showing me what I couldn't see on my own, I typed back. That's good. Take it slow, listen more than you talk, and remember that healing takes time. I will, and I'm going to do better with Ruby and Violet. I promise. I'm holding you to that. The following week, my phone rang at midnight. It was my aunt, crying. I can't sleep, she said. I keep thinking about all the times I dismissed my boys when they needed me, when they were hurt or scared or sad, and I told them to toughen up. You're processing a lot, I said gently. That's normal. My middle son told me something today. When he was 12, he broke his arm falling off his bike. He was in so much pain, crying, and I told him real men don't cry over broken bones, that he needed to set an example for his younger brothers. She was sobbing now. He said he felt so ashamed, so weak. He learned that day that his pain didn't matter, that showing it made him less than. But you're listening now, I said. You're hearing him. That matters. Does it? Can I really make up for 28 years of damage? You can't erase it, but you can help him heal from it. You're doing that by acknowledging it, by apologizing, by changing how you interact with him now. I'm so scared I'll mess it up again, that I'll fall back into old patterns. You probably will sometimes. But the difference is now you'll catch yourself. Now you'll apologize when it happens. Now you're aware. She was quiet for a moment. How did you know? That I would change, I mean. What if I'd just gotten angry and doubled down? I didn't know for sure, I admitted. But I knew I couldn't keep watching you hurt my girls. And I knew that words weren't working. You needed to feel it to understand it. That weekend with Brandon was the worst and best thing anyone's ever done for me, she said. Worst because seeing myself through that lens was horrifying. Best because it saved my relationships with my sons, with your girls, with myself. I'm glad it worked, I said. So am I. Thank you for taking that risk, for caring enough about your daughters to fight for them, even when it meant fighting me. Over the next few days, I got calls from my aunt's other sons. Her middle son called first. Mom told me what happened with Brandon, he said, and she asked me if I wanted to talk about my childhood. Actually asked, not just assumed I was fine. How did that go? I told her everything, about the panic attacks I started having in high school, about how I learned to punch walls instead of cry because she said crying was for weaklings, about the relationships I've ruined because I can't express emotions properly. His voice cracked. She listened. She actually listened. And she apologized. That's huge, I said. I told her about my ex-wife, how she left me because I couldn't show her affection, couldn't tell her how I felt, couldn't communicate beyond surface level. He paused. I loved her, but I didn't know how to express it. I thought providing for her and being reliable was enough. I didn't realize she needed emotional intimacy too. I'm sorry, I said. Mom cried when I told her, said she never meant to set me up for that kind of failure, that she thought she was preparing me for the world, not sabotaging my relationships. He sighed. She asked what she could do to help. I told her therapy would be a start, for both of us. She's starting therapy. She asked me for my therapist's recommendations. He laughed, but it sounded watery. I never thought I'd see the day. How are things with your daughter? I asked. She's too young to remember if I mess this up now. But I'm determined not to. I talk to her about feelings. I let her see me cry. When she's upset, I comfort her instead of telling her to stop. His voice got thick. I'm breaking the cycle. It ends with me. The youngest son called a week later. I just wanted you to know that Mom came to see me, drove 6 hours to my place. We talked for 12 hours straight. 12 hours? I asked, amazed. I had a lot to say. 28 years of a lot to say. He sounded exhausted, but lighter somehow. She didn't interrupt once. She just let me talk. About how alone I felt growing up. About how I thought there was something wrong with me for having feelings. About why I cut her off 2 years ago. What made you cut her off? I asked gently. She told me I was being dramatic when I said I was struggling with depression, said I just needed to exercise more and stop feeling sorry for myself. He sighed. That was the breaking point. I'd spent my whole life trying to be what she wanted, and it was killing me, so I just stopped talking to her. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be. It was the best decision I ever made. It gave me the space to figure out who I was without her voice in my head constantly telling me I was too emotional, too sensitive, too weak. He paused. But I did miss her. My mom, the one I wished I had. And now? Now we're trying. She's different. I can tell. She asked about my therapy, my medication, my support system. She didn't try to fix anything or tell me what to do. She just said she was proud of me for taking care of myself. That must have meant a lot, I said. I cried when she said it. Ugly crying, the kind I spent my whole childhood learning to hide. And you know what she did? She held me, just held me and let me cry. Didn't tell me to stop. Didn't look uncomfortable. Just let me fall apart. His voice broke. That's all I ever wanted. Just to be allowed to feel without judgment. You deserve that, I said. We all did. Me and my brothers. We all deserved a mother who could handle our emotions. He paused. She told me about what you did with Brandon, said it was the wake-up call she needed. Thank you for that. I wasn't sure it would work, I admitted. It worked because she loves us. Somewhere under all that toxic, tough love bullshit, she loves us. And seeing what she'd done reflected back at her through Brandon broke through her defenses. He laughed softly. You're braver than I am. I never would have confronted her like that. I had to, for my girls. And in doing that, you saved us too. The next family gathering was Thanksgiving, 6 weeks later. My aunt arrived early and asked to speak with me privately. I've been in therapy, she said, processing a lot. My therapist helped me understand that I parented the way I was parented. My mother was even harder on me than I was on my boys. I thought I was being gentler because I didn't hit them. I didn't realize emotional neglect was still neglect. That's a big realization, I said. My youngest is coming today, first holiday in 2 years. She looked nervous. My middle son is bringing his therapist's guidelines for healthy communication, and my eldest is bringing Brandon. That's progress. I'm terrified I'll mess it up again. You probably will sometimes, but you're trying. That's what matters. I put my hand on her shoulder. None of us are perfect parents. We all make mistakes. The difference is whether we acknowledge them and try to do better. She smiled, tears in her eyes. When did you get so wise? Around the time I had to document 2 years of your criticism to prove a point. She laughed, a real laugh. I deserve that. Thanksgiving was different that year. My aunt still gave advice, but now she prefaced it with, what do you think about? Or, would it help if, instead of just declaring how things should be done? She asked Ruby and Violet questions about their lives and actually listened to the answers. When Violet got overwhelmed by the crowd and needed a break, my aunt helped set up a quiet space for her in the guest room instead of telling her to push through it. At one point, I found her talking with her youngest son in the kitchen, actually talking. He was explaining something about his life, and she was listening without interrupting or correcting. When he paused, she just said, "That sounds really hard. I'm sorry you went through that." He looked shocked. Then he started crying. She held him while he sobbed, rocking him like he was still small. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry I made you think your feelings didn't matter. I thought I was broken," he whispered. "For so many years, I thought there was something fundamentally wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. There never was. I was wrong. I was so wrong." They stayed like that for a long time. Eventually, her middle son joined them, and then her eldest. All 3 of her sons standing in that kitchen, finally allowed to cry in front of their mother, finally allowed to be human. By the end of the night, something had shifted. The family felt lighter somehow. My aunt's sons were talking more openly. Brandon was laughing and playing with my girls. My aunt was smiling in a way I'd never seen before, genuine and unguarded. As everyone was leaving, my aunt pulled me aside. "I can never undo the damage I caused. To my sons, to your girls, to myself, but I can try to do better going forward. That's all any of us can do," I said. "Thank you for forcing me to see it. I know it was risky. I know I could have just gotten angry and refused to change, but you knew me well enough to know I needed to experience it myself to understand. I gambled," I admitted. "But I figured 3 days of discomfort for Brandon was worth it if it meant preventing years more trauma for my girls. And potentially for him too. It worked. I see them differently now. I see myself differently." She hugged me tight. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this right." She kept that promise. Over the next year, she worked hard on her relationships. She apologized to people she'd hurt with her judgmental parenting advice. She rebuilt trust with her sons. She became the grandmother my daughters actually wanted to spend time with. One afternoon, about a year after the Brandon incident, my aunt picked up Ruby and Violet for an overnight visit. When I went to get them the next day, I found them baking cookies together, flour everywhere, laughing hysterically. "What happened here?" I asked, looking at the disaster zone that was her kitchen. "We made mistakes," Violet announced proudly. "But Aunt said mistakes are how we learn. So we made 17 cookies that look like blobs and 3 that look like actual cookies." My aunt grinned. "The blobs taste better anyway." Ruby ran over to me. "Aunt said she used to think crying was weak, but now she knows it's brave, because it means you're letting yourself feel things." "She said that?" I looked at my aunt, impressed. "My therapist said it first," she admitted, "but I believe it now. I spent so many years thinking emotions were the enemy. I was wrong. They're what make us human." That evening, after the girls had gone to bed, my aunt and I sat on her porch with tea. "You know what the worst part was?" she asked. realizing how much pain I'd caused while thinking I was helping. How many moments I missed with my sons because I was too busy toughening them up to just enjoy them. You can't change the past, I said. No, but I can change the future. She looked at me. Thank you for caring enough about your girls to stand up to me. Most people would have just cut me off. You gave me a chance to do better. Your family. Sometimes that means having hard conversations. Sometimes that means giving someone a taste of their own medicine until they choke on it, she said wryly. We both laughed. 2 years later, my aunt has completely transformed. She's become the grandmother I always hoped she'd be. She volunteers at a family counseling center twice a week, helping parents understand the impact of emotional neglect. She's written apology letters to everyone she gave harmful parenting advice to over the years. Her relationship with her sons is better than it's ever been. A few months ago, my aunt invited me to join her at the counseling center. She wanted to share her story with a group of parents who were struggling with their parenting approaches. I sat in the back while she spoke. She told them everything. About how she'd raised her sons to suppress their emotions. About how it had damaged them. About the years of estrangement. About the Brandon weekend. And how seeing her own methods reflected back at her had finally opened her eyes. I thought I was preparing them for a cruel world, she said. But I was creating the cruelty they'd have to overcome. I was the thing they needed protection from. A mother in the front row was crying. I do the same thing to my son. He's 7. He cries so easily and I keep telling him to toughen up, to be a man. How's that working for you? My aunt asked gently. He started lying to me, saying he's fine when he's clearly not. He doesn't come to me anymore when he's hurt or scared. The mother's voice broke. I thought I was doing the right thing. So did I, my aunt said. But our kids don't need us to be drill sergeants. They need us to be safe harbors, places where they can be vulnerable without judgment. After the session, several parents came up to thank her. One father pulled me aside. What she did to your kids, he said quietly. The criticism, the judgment. I've been doing that to my daughter. She's 9. She has anxiety. And instead of helping her, I've been making it worse by telling her to get over it. It's not too late, I said. How do I fix it? Start by apologizing. Tell her you were wrong. Ask her what she needs from you. And then actually listen to her answer. His eyes were wet. Thank you. I watched him walk away and thought about how many families might be saved because my aunt found the courage to share her story, because I found the courage to confront her, ripples spreading outward. Last month, she called me crying, happy crying. My youngest just told me he loves me, she said through tears, and that he's proud of the work I've done. He hasn't said that in 15 years. That's beautiful, I said, my own eyes getting wet. None of this would have happened if you hadn't forced me to see the truth. I would have kept going, hurting people, thinking I was right. She paused. That weekend with Brandon changed everything. Ruby and Violet adore their great aunt now. They asked to visit her. They call her to tell her about their day. When Ruby had a panic attack at school last month, she asked to call my aunt. Not me, my aunt. Because she knew my aunt would understand and not judge. My aunt talked her through it. Validated her feelings. Told her it was okay to be scared. Told her she was brave for asking for help. When I picked Ruby up from school that day, her teacher pulled me aside. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, she said. Ruby handled that panic attack better than most adults I know. She recognized what was happening, asked for help, and used her coping strategies. That's remarkable for a 7-year-old. I thought about my aunt's old criticism, that Ruby was too sensitive, that I was raising a weak child. But Ruby isn't weak. She's one of the strongest people I know. She feels everything deeply, and she's learning to navigate those feelings instead of suppressing them. That night, Ruby climbed into bed beside me. Mom, can I tell you something? Always, sweetheart. I'm glad you didn't listen to Aunt when she said I was too sensitive, because I like being sensitive. It means I notice when other kids are sad. It means I can help them. You're absolutely right, I said, my throat tight. My teacher said I'm empathetic. That's a good thing, right? It's a wonderful thing. It means you understand how other people feel. That's a superpower, she smiled. Aunt said that too. She said she wishes she'd been more sensitive when she was younger, that maybe she wouldn't have hurt so many people. That's when I knew the change was real. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did, if I feel guilty for using Brandon to prove a point. The answer is complicated. I do feel bad that he had to experience those 3 days, but he was never in real danger. His father knew everything. We monitored his reactions carefully, and the payoff was enormous. One uncomfortable weekend changed the trajectory for an entire family. My daughters are thriving. My aunt's sons are healing. Brandon has a grandmother who actually listens to him now. The next generation won't have to unlearn toxic ideas about emotional expression. Was it manipulative? Yes. Was it harsh? Absolutely. Was it necessary? I believe it was. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is hold up a mirror, even when the reflection is hard to look at, especially then. My aunt stopped by yesterday with gifts for the girls. Not expensive things, but thoughtful ones. Books about emotions for Ruby. A journal for Violet to write down her feelings. Things that showed she understood and accepted them. As she was leaving, she hugged me tight. I never thanked you properly, she said, for loving your daughters enough to fight for them, for believing their feelings mattered, for refusing to let me make them small. They were never small, I said. They were just themselves. That was always enough. It took me too long to see that. She pulled back, looking at me. But I see it now. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure they know how extraordinary they are. They already know, I said, smiling, because I've been telling them every day since they were born. She laughed. You're a better mother than I ever was. I'm just a different kind of mother. The kind my girls needed. As I watched her drive away, Ruby came up beside me. I'm glad Aunt changed. Me too, sweetheart. Do you think she'll stay changed? Violet asked, worried. I think so, because she's working hard at it, and because she finally understands why it matters. That night, tucking them into bed, Ruby asked me something unexpected. Did you really do all that stuff to Brandon on purpose? I'd been wondering when they'd ask. Yes. I needed to show your great aunt what her advice actually felt like, so she'd stop trying to make you two into something you're not. But you felt bad about it, Ruby observed. I could tell. I did. Very bad. But sometimes we have to do hard things to protect the people we love. Did it work? What do you think? Ruby considered. Yeah, it worked. Anne is nice now. She doesn't make me feel bad anymore. That's what matters. Violet yawned. I'm glad I can be sensitive. Me too, baby. Me too. I turned off their light, leaving just the nightlight on, the one my aunt used to say they were too old for, the one that made them feel safe. Some kids need tough love, but some kids need soft love. And some kids just need love, period. However they can receive it. Whatever form makes them feel secure and valued and seen, that's what I've learned. There's no one right way to raise a child, but there are definitely wrong ways. And dismissing their feelings, minimizing their pain, and forcing them to be something they're not, those are all wrong. My girls are growing up knowing their emotions are valid, that crying doesn't make them weak, that asking for help is brave, that sensitivity is a gift, not a flaw. And my aunt is finally learning the same lessons. Better late than never. Last week, she asked if she could share our story at her volunteer group. With my permission, of course. I think it could help other parents who are like I used to be, she said, who think toughness is the only way to raise strong kids. What would you tell them? I asked, curious. That I almost lost my entire family because I confused strength with silence. That I damaged my sons trying to protect them. That real strength isn't hiding your feelings. It's having the courage to feel them. She paused. And that sometimes the people who love you most will do uncomfortable things to wake you up, because they care too much to watch you destroy the people you love. You can share it, I said, if you think it'll help. She did. I heard from 3 different parents afterward who said her story changed their perspective. One mother apologized to her daughter for years of dismissing her anxiety. Another father started therapy to address his own emotional suppression. A third parent called their own mother and finally confronted the childhood they'd been pretending was fine. 6 months ago, my aunt told me she was writing a book about her journey. She'd been working with a therapist and a writer to document everything. The mistakes she made, the damage she caused, the process of recognition and change, the ongoing work of healing. I want other parents to know they can change, she said, that it's not too late, that their kids might forgive them if they do the work. She asked if she could interview me for it, about my perspective, about what it was like watching her hurt my daughters, about planning the Brandon weekend. We sat in her kitchen with a voice recorder between us. For 3 hours, I told her everything. How Ruby would go quiet when she heard my aunt was coming over. How Violet developed a stomachache every time we drove to family gatherings. How I'd document every criticism in my notes app, building a case I hoped I'd never have to use. How my husband and I would lie awake at night, arguing about whether I should cut her off entirely or keep trying to make her understand. I never knew, she said, tears streaming down her face. I never knew they were that afraid of me. They weren't afraid of you. They were afraid of being themselves around you, of being judged and found wanting. She wrote it all down, every painful detail. The book came out last month. My aunt dedicated it to her 3 sons and to Ruby and Violet. To the children I hurt, the dedication read, and to the children who saved me from hurting more. The response has been overwhelming. Parents reaching out to thank her. Adult children sending messages saying they finally feel seen. Therapists recommending it to clients. Support groups forming around it. Last week, a woman stopped my aunt in the grocery store. You wrote that book, she said, about emotionally neglecting your sons. My aunt braced herself, expecting anger or judgment. Thank you, the woman said, crying. I've been doing the same thing to my daughter, telling her to stop being so dramatic, to toughen up, to stop crying. Your book made me realize I was teaching her that her feelings don't matter. I apologized to her yesterday. Really apologized. We're starting therapy together next week. My aunt called me immediately after, sobbing. Do you know what this means? She said. That little girl is going to have a different childhood now. A better one, because I was willing to be honest about what I did wrong. You're helping people, I said. That's what matters. I wish I could go back, undo all the damage, give my sons the childhood they deserved. You can't change the past, but you're changing the future for countless other families. That's not nothing. That's everything. One story, one uncomfortable weekend, ripples spreading outward. Brandon visited us last month with his dad. He's 9 now, taller, more confident. When he arrived, he hugged my daughters and then came over to me. Thank you, he said seriously. For what, buddy? For that weekend. Dad explained it all to me, about what you were trying to show Grandma. It was weird and kind of scary, but it helped. Grandma's different now. Better. How do you feel about her now? I asked. I like her. We talk on the phone every week. She asks about my feelings and listens when I tell her about stuff. She came to my baseball game last week and didn't tell me to be tougher when I struck out. She just said she was proud of me for trying. He grinned. It's nice. I'm glad, I said, meaning it. She told me about my dad and uncles, about how she used to parent them. Dad cries sometimes when he talks about it. Brandon looked thoughtful. He's teaching me that it's okay to cry, that feelings are normal. I'm lucky. You are. And so is your dad. He's breaking a cycle. Later, his dad pulled me aside. His therapist says he's doing really well. The divorce was hard, but he's processing it in healthy ways. He knows it's okay to be sad about it. He knows his feelings are valid. That's wonderful, I said. Mom bought him a journal for writing down his feelings when he can't talk about them. She's reading parenting books about emotional intelligence. She's actually trying. He shook his head in wonder. 2 years ago, I never would have believed this was possible. People can change, I said. My mom's therapist recommended I start family therapy with her to work through everything from my childhood. He looked uncomfortable. It's been intense, a lot of stuff I'd buried, but it's helping. We're finally having real conversations, honest ones. That takes courage, I said. So does what you did. People think it was harsh, but I get it. Sometimes you have to shock people out of their patterns. Words weren't working. Mom needed to feel it to understand it. He paused. Brandon's mom and I are even talking about giving him a sibling. We're not getting back together, but we're co-parenting better now. And I want my kids to grow up with better than I had. Mom's helping with that now, instead of hurting it. Last Christmas was the first holiday where my entire extended family felt genuinely comfortable. Ruby and Violet didn't hide. My aunt's sons laughed freely. Brandon called my aunt from across the room to show her something without hesitation. We took a family photo that day. In it, my aunt is holding both my girls, all 3 of them smiling genuinely. Her sons stand with their families, relaxed and open. Brandon is making a silly face at the camera, totally unself-conscious. I have that photo on my fridge now. Sometimes I look at it and remember what it was like before. The tension, the criticism, the walking on eggshells, the way Ruby would flinch when my aunt entered a room, the way Violet would go silent and still. And then I look at them now, thriving, confident, unafraid to be themselves. That's what I fought for. That's what that uncomfortable weekend bought us. A family where kids can be kids, where feelings are allowed, where sensitivity is valued instead of shame. My mother, my aunt's sister, called me a few months ago. We'd always had a decent relationship, but she'd witnessed everything between me and my aunt over the years. I owe you an apology, she said. For what? For not standing up for you and your girls, for staying neutral when I should have taken your side. I watched her tear you down, criticize your parenting, make your daughters feel small. And I said nothing because I didn't want to cause family drama. It's okay, I said. No, it's not. By saying nothing, I was complicit. I was telling you that keeping the peace mattered more than protecting your children. She paused. You were braver than me. You did what I should have done years ago. You held up that mirror and refused to look away. Thank you, I said, surprised by how much I needed to hear that. Your girls are remarkable, she continued. Ruby's empathy, Violet's self-awareness. You did that. By protecting their emotional development, by validating their feelings, by fighting for their right to be sensitive. You raised emotionally intelligent children in a family that traditionally valued emotional suppression. I just loved them the way they needed to be loved, I said. That's revolutionary. In our family, that's absolutely revolutionary. She was right. For generations, our family had prized stoicism over vulnerability, toughness over tenderness. My aunt had just been continuing a legacy that had probably damaged countless children before her sons, but it stops here. With my generation, with my daughters, Ruby and Violet will grow up knowing their emotions are valid, that asking for help is strength, not weakness. That sensitivity is a gift that allows them to connect deeply with others, to create meaningful art, to build genuine relationships, to live authentically. They'll never have to unlearn the toxic lessons my aunt's sons are still unlearning. They'll never cry in showers to hide their tears. They'll never punch walls because they don't know how to express sadness. They'll never ruin relationships because they can't communicate their feelings. They're free. Free in a way previous generations of our family never were. And my aunt's sons are getting there too. Slowly, painfully. But they're learning. And the next generation, their children, will have it even easier. The cycle is truly broken. Last night, Violet asked me why I let her keep her nightlight when she's getting big now. Because it makes you feel safe, I said. And feeling safe is more important than arbitrary ideas about what big girls should or shouldn't need. Aunt used to say I was too old for it, she said quietly. Aunt was wrong about a lot of things, but she learned and changed. That's what matters. Can people always change? If they want to badly enough and if they're willing to do the work, yes. But it's hard. It takes courage to admit you were wrong and to do things differently. You have courage, Violet said. You stood up to Aunt even though it was scary. I did, I agreed. Because some things are worth being brave for. You and your sister are 2 of those things. She hugged me tight. I'm glad you're my mom. I'm glad you're my daughter, exactly as you are. Sensitive and sweet and absolutely perfect. So when people ask if I regret what I did, I think about my daughters. Happy, healthy, emotionally intelligent. I think about my aunt, finally building real relationships with her sons. I think about Brandon, growing up with a father who's learning to feel, and a grandmother who's learning to listen. And I think no, I don't regret it at all. Sometimes love looks like comfort. Sometimes it looks like boundaries. And sometimes it looks like holding up a mirror until someone finally sees themselves clearly. That's what I did. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat.